She's manipulating me. That's the story you tell yourself when the tears start. She's being entitled. That's the justification when you want to say no, but you feel guilty. I'm sure it's fine. I'm sure it's fine. That's the lie you whisper to yourself when you think about her social media or the boys she's hanging out with, right? But the real story here, the one you don't say out loud, is that having the hard conversation makes you uncomfortable. And deep down, you know the truth. It's not about her. It's really about you. And the fear that if you get it wrong, you'll either raise a daughter who walks all over you or one you failed to protect.
Your daughter doesn't need a perfect father. She needs one committed to being better. Welcome to the First Hero podcast, where girl dads break harmful cycles and build impactful legacies.
Welcome to the First Hero podcast. I'm your forever gracious host, Corey Eccles. And this is my beautiful bald partner,
Rich. Good to have you with us today.
Yeah, let's get into it. So today's podcast episode, we're going to talk about something that's happening in the background always, 24/7, while you eat, sleep, breathe. And this is the stories that we tell ourselves. This is the narration. This is the script. This is the movie theater. This is the movie playing inside of everybody's head. And you are the main character, right? You are the main character of the story. And everybody else has their scripts, their roles, and they're just actors in your play, right? So this is very important for us because how we operate inside of the relationship with our daughter is very much dictated by the story we tell ourselves, right? So we're going to talk about some key things today. We're going to talk about, manipulation being one of them, being entitled. So really the labels that we place on our daughters, right? That's, and the behavior as a result.
They all stem from a story.
Yeah, they all stem from a story.
And usually the stories that we're telling ourselves about our daughters are similar to the stories we tell ourselves about the job that we're in, the wife, the partner we chose, the body that we have.
Yep.
You know, there's not typically a break between the stories that show up and dictate the other areas of our life and the stories that we put around our daughter and specifically their behavior.
Yeah, 100%.
And they can be super harmful.
Yeah. Well, they're harmful.
They can be harmful or helpful.
Right. A lot of the times they're harmful, to be honest.
The ones we're going to be talking about today are going to be harmful.
Because they show up the most.
Yeah.
And this is why they're harmful, is because you are the main actor inside of your play. You're the main character, you're also the director. And what happens typically is unconsciously we hand people these scripts, or here's the play, here's the script.
Yeah.
Right? And then we set these expectations. Hey, you have to follow the script to the T. And then when your daughter gets outside of those scripts, right, when she starts doing her own thing, you're like, whoa, wait a minute. That's not part of the script. Hold on here. And then you start, that's when you start catastrophizing, et cetera, et cetera. But this happens unconsciously, right?
Let's talk about the two internal, like some of the most prevalent internal stories that you and I find in ourselves, and then also talking with other fathers.
Yeah, definitely. The biggest one that I hear is manipulation. Manipulation is probably like, she's manipulating me. I'm being manipulated. And Rich, I know we've talked before. I know you have a story about this. You want to share that?
I mean, I have a lot of stories about this. And, candidly, Corey and I we're in this fight together, which is why we started this whole First Hero community and movement, why we're building all of this, because we realized that iron sharpens iron, and Corey and I have that relationship where I can come to him and kind of share some of these stories that most men don't talk about that are running through my head, and specifically around manipulation. I'll share a quick story with you. When I first got into the real estate business, the sales business, I took a bunch of personality tests to try to uncover, psychologically how I operate, therefore how other people operate. And those, if you've ever taken a personality test, you know how comprehensive the results can be. And it's kind of like reading a fortune, in the sense that, like, it's exciting and you start to have that introspective view. Well, the results were pretty conclusive across a couple different tests. And one of the fears, as it breaks down, one of the things that it had indicated to me, or for me, my personality, that I feared, was the fear of being taken advantage of. And I remember when I read that, it was like, damn, I had never really connected that before, but as soon as I read the words, I was like, yeah, that's a fucking pain point, dude.
Yeah.
That describes that hit on something inside of me.
Yeah.
And so I share that story because that story, that trigger, if you will, or that programming writes stories in my life, and specifically around my relationship with my daughters. It writes stories when they are being challenging, when they are challenging me, when they are not conforming to my requests, when they are not being communicative. I start that little trigger unmanaged. It starts to manifest itself into stories, and those stories usually results in something that sounds like she's manipulating me. And the same feeling starts. And guess what happens when that feeling starts? The actions follow.
Yeah.
And what do I do to someone? How do I react to someone who I feel is trying to manipulate me? It's not positive.
Right.
It's not positive. And I find myself that story then being the front that my daughter is battling against instead of having a connection with her dad.
Yeah, 100%. And that's the filter that you see life through. Whenever you see a threat, there's a filter. She's manipulating, and then pretty much that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, because everything she does, you see through that filter is manipulation. When in reality, manipulation takes a lot of processing power, a lot of brain power. I always like to say this. I always like to test fathers when they come to me and say my daughter's manipulating me. I always let them know it takes an immense amount of brain power. So if your daughter had the skill set to fulfill an unmet need, and she wasn't using it, she was using a different set of skill sets that wasn't the most conducive way to get that need, then that is manipulation at its finest, where you possess the skill sets to get what you need, but you make a choice to use a different set of skill sets instead that lead to false pretenses, manipulation, right? So your daughter doesn't have the skill set to necessarily get what she wants. She's doing what she can, and she has the skills she's acquired to get what she wants. But we see it as manipulation because we have adult brains. But in a baby brain, it's like, or even a child, anyone 18. I mean, I know even adults who don't possess the skills to get what they want, and people think it's manipulation. It's like, whoa. Like, you know, some people don't know how to communicate, especially your kid.
For context too, I'm specifically talking about my young children, right? Yeah. My daughter, my oldest is 4. And so those of you with older children, if that's not a skill set that your daughter has sharpened, it could definitely be a struggle. I mean, I've met adults well into their 30s who have not sharpened this skill set, and they're still allowing, they haven't yet discerned the difference between exactly what you described, which is I've never had it described that way, which makes a lot of sense. But for context, we're talking about specifically if you have young daughters. Mm-hmm. There is an evolution of their brain that they don't even possess the brain computing power to manipulate.
Right.
But our adult filters will look at the situation and be like, she's manipulative.
She's manipulative. Yeah. And when we really test that, most of the fathers are like, holy shit, dude, thank you. Like that was mind blowing. Right. So that's cool. Story number 2, another big one is entitlement, or she's being needy. So again, these are labels: manipulative, needy, entitled, right? These are all labels. The story of being needy or entitled is probably the next biggest one. So Rich, I don't know. Do you have a story about that one?
Yeah. I mean, listen, I'm an open,
I don't mean to put you on the spot.
I'm an open book. Yeah, sure. Let's show everyone how fucked up I am. No, but the reality is like, I think if we're being honest with each other as men, we probably share a lot of similarities in this, but she's being needy or entitled, dude, 100%. One of my greatest goals for being a father and instilling traits within my daughters is I don't want them to be entitled. I don't want them to be needy. I want them to be resourceful. I want them to be gritty. I want them to be independent. I want them to be strong. Right. And so when I have a little bit of a story around this too. It's probably not as prevalent in my life as the manipulation one. But dude, definitely. Like if I have Ro, my youngest, who's just constantly at my heels, like sometimes I do feel myself distancing because in my mind, I recognize a story that starts to play where it's like she needs to learn to be independent. She's a year and a half, guys.
Right. She's a year and a half.
She doesn't possess the brain processing ability, the emotional capability to learn independence right now. It's just me as an adult looking at her as if she's the same age and the same experience as me. Like, oh no, I'm not going to give you attention right now because you need to learn to do it on your own.
100%.
And I try to catch that because that personally, I think it's toxic. I feel toxic when I do that.
Yeah. Well, thank God you have the self-awareness. But to circle back, that's the script. That's the unconscious script in your play that you're handing to your daughter, right? Whenever you the label of entitled or needy comes up, you always tie it to an unmet expectation, which is Rich was saying, I want my daughters to be gritty. I want my daughters to be this. I want my daughters to be that. And when they're not, they're entitled. They're going off script. Holy shit. Okay, everybody cut.
Right.
We need to get you back on script because you're not being this certain way.
Exactly.
Make sense?
Yeah, behavior-based.
Exactly. So that's the fear that kind of drives us in parenting and then we can stem it all the way back. It's like, well, if my daughter's not gritty or resourceful, she's gonna grow up, be fucked up. She's not gonna find a relationship. She's not gonna have kids. She's gonna die alone. Shit. And then you're just catastrophizing, right?
Absolutely.
All at an unconscious level. So these are the labels we really have to watch out for. And here's a caveat because this is very important because as a girl dad with your daughter, when you're labeling your child a certain way, when she's being needy, entitled, or manipulating, what you're doing is you're placing that label on your child. And what happens is there's behavior and then identity, your child. What you're doing is you're collapsing the two, right? Your child is now the behavior. Your child is now manipulative. Your child is now needy. And what happens is that closes you off to empathy, right? To really understanding. It closes you off to compassion, and compassion is really like giving a shit enough to help your daughter when in her time of need. It closes you off to that because now you're looking at your daughter like it's you versus your daughter, right? But what we need to understand here is we need to separate the two, your daughter and behavior. Yep. When we separate the two, something magical happens. I want you to picture a bench, and you're sitting on this bench with your daughter side by side, hand in hand. When you separate behavior and identity, you're now able to open the pathways of empathy and compassion. And now it's you and your daughter versus a problem. And now you're in a problem-solving mode. And the way and your behavior and how you handle those scenarios ultimately changes. This is what has fundamentally changed my behavior with my daughter, hands down.
That's beautiful, bro. And I just want to take it a step further. For those of you fathers listening, if you are the type of father listening and you're plugging into stuff like this because you want to be on your deathbed one day and you want the thought of the relationship and connection with your daughter to be one of the most important and meaningful things you've ever had in your entire life, this is how.
Yeah.
This is also how you avoid that.
Yeah.
Right? By making every problem, by collapsing, like you said, dude, collapsing the identity with the behavior and making it all one, and approaching every situation like it's you versus your daughter instead of you and your daughter versus the problem or the challenge.
Yeah.
So I love that, dude.
Yeah. Pro tip, that's everything in life.
That's everything in life, but this is, we're really drilling down on dads and daughters here. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is let's talk about external stories too, right? Because those are two of the most, I think, important internal stories, but external stories, those are the ones we sometimes let off the hook because we think that they're maybe going to take care of themselves, they're going to work themselves out, or maybe even somebody else is going to be able to kind of help step in on that. And I want to share a little bit of background. We've been fortunate enough to coach one-on-one with Bedros Keuilian, who, if you don't know who Bedros is, shout out to B. We've coached with him for about 4 months now, one-on-one. And he is
amazing human being,
an incredible leader, and really a beacon of light in the space of men, self-mastery, and the pursuit of individual greatness and collective greatness, to be honest with you. So if you've not subscribed to him, the Bedros Keuilian Show, it's amazing. Bedros puts out some incredible content. But we talked with him about this episode, and we asked him, B, what are some stories that men and fathers are telling themselves that are harmful and have a harmful outcome? And he had 2 stories that are external that I think are really important to kind of weave in here. So the first one is going to be, he said, fathers tell themselves stories to avoid stirring the pot, to avoid what they think will become a confrontation. And so let's talk about story number 1. In the day and age that we live in with social media, this is a super prevalent story. Now, I'm not there yet. We're not there yet because we have younger kids, but people listening, like fathers listening with girls that are of an age where social media, all their friends are on social media. And depending on where you're at with your daughter in social media, this could be super, super important. So I want you to listen up here. The story that we tell ourselves, and I can foresee myself getting here and other fathers, the story you tell yourselves in regards to social media and your daughter is, I'm sure she's being safe. Right? Yeah. The story we tell ourselves to,
I trust her, right?
Yeah, I trust her.
She's got it.
I've
right?
taught her well, right?
Yeah.
The story that we're telling ourselves to avoid looking at her phone or her DMs, her posts, right? We tell ourselves this to kind of keep the peace. And we say things like, I'm sure her mom is checking, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure
her
mom's
got it.
Mom's got it, right?
And then never checking with mom.
Right,
It's just kind of this unspoken thing.
It's an unspoken thing. You're you're making an assumption,
dude, that
right?
fucking happens about the garbage can in the trash, bro.
100%.
Or the dishes, bro. Like, it's happening with social media, dude.
100%. And it's such an important one in today. What about, I don't want to be the dad I don't want to be that dad. Right. Yeah. I don't want to be the overbearing dad.
Overbearing, protective dad, blah, blah, blah.
I don't want to get on her bad side,
dude,
and make it awkward for her.
That's so dangerous. That is such a dangerous belief to adopt because the internet nowadays is so fucking dangerous. It's so dangerous. Roblox for kids. It's run by people who do not have the best interest for your children. You know, so it's so dangerous out there to have that belief. Anyways, I don't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, 100%. No, I don't even know what that is. It's a game or something.
It's a game that kids are getting on, and you know, there's predators out there that are luring these kids in these chat rooms, and getting them to commit suicide, getting them to run away from home, and you know, kids are going missing. Like, dude, it's not good,
bro. Social media is scary just because of the influence, right? And you and I both know that like influence in your first 20 years of life are like, it's hyper sensitive.
Yeah.
Your brains are hyper sensitive.
They're aware of it because you're figuring out who you are and what you like.
All your identities are being formed.
Community, like I want to be a part of something. So like you're malleable. You're a piece of clay.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, and you're kind of you're subject. You know, social media is opening up the floodgates of information and beliefs that could be incredible. And could be detrimental. Like you know, super detrimental. So that's one external story. Let's talk about external story number 2, the boyfriend story. Right? I'm sure he's a nice boy. We don't have daughters that are at the age that we have to worry about this, but I know there's men listening who do.
Yeah.
Right? How many times have you? Be honest, Dad. How many times have you heard yourself in your head think, maybe I should step in and have a conversation, or maybe I should meet this boy, and you make up an excuse. I got to work, or I'm too busy, or, you know.
Like, I don't want to be that overbearing dad. I'm sure she's got it. Okay, you guys are like,
I checked him out on social media.
Okay, you guys are doing okay, right? Yeah, no, dude, I mean, and it goes both ways. There's the super protective dad where the daughter like I have to hide it from my dad, and that's just as dangerous as I'm sure he's just a nice boy. I'm going to let my daughter do whatever.
Yeah, we're not. That's an important distinction. We're not talking about being a hyper aggressive, like over the top protective dad, but having listen, when it comes to boys, here's my philosophy. If you're a dad who's willing to show up and be present and shake the hand of the boy
I'm here.
And have a conversation, even though it's awkward, and force eye contact, that boy's going to get it.
Yeah.
You don't have to show him a gun. You don't have to fucking threaten him. You don't have to come out with a baseball bat.
That's dumb as fuck. Don't do that.
All you need to do is be imposing as a father. That's it. You don't have to be verbally aggressive or anything like that, but you need to shake his hand firm. You need to look him in the eye, and you need to have a very serious, connection with him and let him know, without saying the words, you will let him know that I'm present. I'm here. 100%. I'm involved in this.
Yep. And something will change. He'll hopefully conform. If not, then might have to take some procedures. But
then we got bats for you.
Yeah, then we got bats and guns. But just a caveat to that. I read an article about a prolific child predator who did horrific things that we can't discuss on this podcast. And one of his deterrents was when asked, like, "Hey, how do you pick your your victim?" And he says, "I stay away from my victims. I stay away from the ones who have present fathers.
Dads who look like a threat." Yeah. I remember seeing
dads who look like a threat, blah, blah, blah. The same thing goes with boyfriends, dude. Like, your presence is felt, and make it felt, but don't be overbearing.
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, you have to show some respect for your daughter in this as well. When Bedros was sharing the story, he would make it an intention that when his daughter was going to meet up with some friends and there were going to be some boys there, he would always make it a point to go and say, I want to meet this boy. And so, obviously he mentioned there was some pushback for sure. His daughter wasn't like super excited.
She's not going to be jumping up for joy, dude, but she's going to respect you.
But she respected
she's
it,
gonna
right?
Respect it.
And he even said, he would get in the circle, introduce himself, talk, you guys what are you guys going to do? You guys should have a great time. I'm excited for y'all to hang out. And then he would shake the boys' hands, right?
And he said, these girls are your responsibility now. As men, you're responsible for these girls' safeties, right? And they're just like, yeah.
Exactly.
That's setting the standard right there.
That's setting the standard, and it's also having some accountability without saying,
but you're also,
I'm going to beat your ass if my daughter gets hurt, right? You don't have to go there, but you can have that same effect.
But most importantly, like you're influencing these kids. You're putting a seed, you're planting a seed in this little boy's brain. And
a
now,
target.
You're
for them to
said,
hit.
Exactly, and said, okay. And then, because I know for me as a young man, I would take that to heart. I'd be like, yep, I'm the protector now. Cool. But you're pre-framing, you're putting that in that position. I love it. There's so many good things to that. But
absolutely,
really, honestly, so whether the story she's manipulating me, whether you're saying I'm sure it's fine, all that good stuff, they all serve the same purpose. They're not truths, man. They're just shields. They're filters to make you feel comfortable, right? They're to protect us from discomfort, right?
Absolutely.
So let's move on. Let's talk about some fears underneath all these stories.
This is where it gets really, really good. And so we're going to run through this because we got to go a couple layers deeper. Because it's not just about her behavior, it's really about our fear as fathers, right? Because that spins the story, and then the story dictates our results or our actions, I guess I should say. So let's talk about these stories real quick. She's manipulating me. There is a very good chance that this is showing up as a fear of, I don't know how to handle her emotions, and that makes me feel powerless.
Powerless.
Control. Right? I have a lack of control. And what do most of us do when we feel out of control? We start to panic.
Yeah, we want to gain control, and then we start acting in ways that are not serving us or
overbearing, increasing our voice, increasing our aggression in the way we treat, emotionally, verbally, physically. Dude, it can manifest in a ton of different ways. But I can tell you, when I feel out of control, I'm in a manic state. I'm in a chaotic internal chaos.
Same, dude.
And dude, that shows up for my little girls, man. They start to fire at a different frequency, and it's not a positive one.
It's not positive.
And I see how my energy sets the tone for my little girls. And like a situation that comes up for me is like, we now live an hour away from school. And so on the days I have to take him to school, it can be a mad dash, especially if dad is like rushing the whole time and like I'm hungry and I didn't wake up on time. So now I'm kind of like behind the 8 ball and I feel that pressure and I feel that chaos and being out of control, and I'm rushing the girls and I'm short and I'm snappy. And then before I know it, the girls are pissed too.
And then their behavior comes out, and then you're like, what the fuck? It's like, dude, you were at the center of that.
100%.
You caused that storm.
It's extreme ownership, dude. We have to look in the mirror, dads. We have to look in the mirror. Like the stories that we tell ourselves about our daughters come from a place within us first.
Yeah.
That's where they manifest. What about the story she needs? Yeah. She's needy. She's entitled.
Yeah, that's a good one. So that one's a fear of, first of all, fear dictates and operates all of our behavior inside of parenting. Like all of pretty much our parenting today in this culture is fear-based parenting, right?
Caveman brain.
Caveman brain. It's our reptilian brain, right? All of it stems from that. And we're not going to get too deep into that, but this one specifically, the needy and entitled one, is that she's not going to be able to handle the world without me, right? I'm creating a weak child. I need her to be strong. I need her to be resilient. I need her to be resourceful. That's the fear under there, right? That's the belief set that causes that label to surface.
Yeah.
Make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah, and this as I've shared, this is one that's very close to me as well. What about the story of, I'm sure she's fine on social media?
Yeah, that one's conflict. I don't want to be the bad guy.
Conflict avoidance.
Yep. Conflict avoidance. That's very much a fawn cycle. That's a people pleasing. I don't want to. That's like the peacekeeper. That's the permissive style of parenting that we cover. That's the, I don't want to step on any toes, so I'm going to kind of let her do just to keep the peace and to maintain the relationship at the detriment of your daughter, putting yourself in potentially violent or deadly situations. Makes sense. which that's an extreme, deadly and violent. That's potential.
I mean, it could
right?
be. It can manifest that way depending on how out of touch you are. But what about he seems like a nice boy? This kind of coincides with the same one, right?
Same one, dismissive.
Dismissive.
You're dismissing, and maybe he does seem like a nice boy, and maybe you are saying that, but maybe it could be helpful to take it a step further. But
you got to audit it.
yeah,
You have to audit it.
He seems like a nice boy. Yeah, he is great, and then I was a nice boy too to most parents.
But I also,
I was not.
Yeah, I mean, not in all situations, dude. Boys are boys. We make mistakes.
That's why we're girl dads now, dude.
Yeah. But like, let's just look at the underlying fear, right? He seems like a nice boy.
Yeah.
This could easily be, a fear of having hard conversations with a teenage boy being awkward.
Right?
Yeah. The situation with
not being confrontational
with Bedros, right? He even said like it was super awkward. Chloe wasn't exactly thrilled about it. However, it needed to be done.
Yeah, and he set the expectation before him with Chloe, so it wasn't out of the blue. Like,
exactly.
Chloe knew, which is also very important. Always talk to your daughter first and let her know what you're going to do. Don't ever do shit that's out of the blue, right? Because that transition is going to be pretty fucking messy, and she's going to be pissed.
Yeah, you want to include her in the why,
right?
So she has somewhat of an understanding. The last thing I wanted to harp on here with the boys is. This fear is really rooted in a place that I think is going to hit a lot of fathers in the chest, because I know that it did me, and it just how powerful it is. The fear can be rooted in a thought of I'd rather risk my daughter's safety than my own discomfort.
Ooh, that's actually a good one,
because that's truly where it comes from.
Right.
We're not going into the situation saying, nope, I'd rather be comfortable. And, daughter, you're
like, that's not
good
on
luck.
That's not on like the forethought of your brain.
That's not the thought.
But there's a trade-off.
But that is the underlying processing that your subconscious mind is doing. It's analyzing, okay, if I go in this situation, it's going to be highly uncomfortable. If I don't go in this situation, my daughter could potentially be at risk. And we know which one, if you're choosing avoiding that conversation, you have now made an unconscious decision.
Yeah, and that's the unconscious cycles we're talking about, guys. All this shit is connected, bro. All of it. Like, listen, pay attention to our episodes.
Yep.
Watch them all, because they're all connected.
Yep.
So let's talk about story and signal, dude.
Yeah, let's talk about that. So you want to talk about the reframe?
Yeah, so reframing. So reframing is such a powerful tool. Again, it sounds so sterile. It sounds like black and white, like, oh, you just need to reframe. Like, but
most people don't know what a reframe is.
It's simple, right? But it's not easy. Reframing is just taking in an event happens. It's filtered through your belief systems, right? Your current belief systems
and fears,
fears, right? Fears stem from belief systems, right? Fear is a symptom of a belief. So it has a belief, then you interpret it. You interpret the situation that's happening, right? And then you apply meaning to it. And that's when fear happens, right? So there's pauses in between all of these, right? It may seem automatic unconscious, but I promise you there's space between each one of these, right? That gives us the ability. And what we do in First Hero is we get a master of these spaces, right? These very milliseconds, right? But that comes with self-awareness. Now, reframe is when you take in a certain event. If it gets filtered through your beliefs, you create an interpretation, that fear hits you, and then you say, okay, but what if this, right?
The fear is the trigger or the signal, by the way.
The fear is the signal, exactly. The fear is the signal. That's the symptom. Now you take that interpretation and then you just reframe it to something positive. My daughter's doing this, therefore X. Well, what if she's doing it to, I don't have a to try and spin it to a positive of her behavior, her negative quote unquote behavior. Try and spin it to a positive result, right?
Well, so here's some good context that I was thinking. This will probably help. Like thinking of your daughter's behavior not as a problem to be solved,
right?
But as a signal to be decoded with her.
Yeah, because there's an unmet need. Right.
Exactly. It's exactly like your example with you sitting on the bench.
So a reframe would probably be like, hey, she's doing this thing. I want to react this way, but hey, what if there's a need under there? What is the unmet need? What does she actually really need? We call that root to bloom. There's roots on a flower, there's roots, and then there's a bloom, which is the flower. The flower, the bloom, that's the behavior. That's the symptom. That's her actually acting. Down in the roots, there's unmet needs. So reframing yourself to saying, okay, there's an unmet need. Let's try and meet the unmet need here. right? That's a powerful reframe that I use. I used last night, dude. I had one of the worst hours with Hillary and Tatum last night. Holy shit, what a roller coaster, dude. And the whole time I was reframing. I was a reframe fucking Jedi, dude. Reframing constantly, dude. And
to avoid blow up,
to avoid blow up,
trigger.
dude. Oh my God, Hillary and I, and we're getting really good at this, but woo, like it was a ride. And then, but I knew it was at the end of the day. She's been sleeping like shit lately. Her stomach's not really feeling well. So then,
You're not talking about
so
Hillary,
this
right?
is no, this I'm talking about Tatum. So
Right.
this is the root. This is me. I'm actually walking you through an exercise. This is the root. This is me walking through the exercise. She's tired. She's been having stomach problems. I don't know, her poops have been weird. She hasn't been sleeping well. All these things, she's tired. It's at the end of the day. So these are all the things I'm telling myself, like, hey, she's having a hard time. She's not giving me a hard time, right? Because she dropped her plate of food on the floor and went fucking ape shit. And then Cora, our dog, came and started eating it, and then it just went nuclear.
Oh yeah.
And it was like that for like fucking an hour, dude. And then we're like, Hillary is like, okay, dude, like we need to get this girl a bath. And we need to get her in bed. And all while she's fucking
Emergency protocols.
She's going hot. She's going cold. She's laughing. She's crying. She's laughing. She's screaming. We're having fun. We're screaming. Like, and I couldn't do anything right as a father.
Nope.
Like everything.
And the more
was
you
wrong.
try to solve it,
and
the
more
worse it gets.
Exactly. So I'm like, let's just keep pushing this through. And I'm constantly reframing, master the reframe. Whereas like 3 years ago, bro, dude, I would have fucking been screaming. I would have been throwing shit. I probably would have punched a hole in the wall. I would have thrown her ass in bed without a shower and food and said, fucking go to sleep. That's how I believed I would have been.
Yeah, that's powerful. That's a great segue into one of our upcoming episodes. So let's start to land the plane here.
Yeah. Let's do a hot take. Yeah.
Let's do it.
Cool, man. So hot take for those of you who do not know, if you're new to the channel, what I do is I read out a quote that has hopefully some sort of relativity to the episode. Sometimes not, always not. Rich doesn't know the quote that I'm going to be giving him, so he's got to give a hot take in his own words. Cool. Okay, I think I have it here somewhere. Okay, so this one's cool, and this one's from my boy Viktor Frankl. Wrote an amazing book. He spent time in Auschwitz, and don't want to get too deep into it, but this is actually a very relevant quote to this. So, and I just kind of alluded to it in the spaces in between our reactions. But between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom.
Yeah, it's the first place that my mind goes on this is like, I think for us girl dads listening, I think that space is where this first hero concept lives. It's where the standard needs to be raised, and it's about awareness of just that space being in our control. It's taking an extreme ownership. First, there's an audit that has to take place. There's an awakening that takes place, which hopefully most of you men and fathers listening, you're in the awakening state or maybe even beyond it. But in your understanding, man, this perfectly describes that space that I know that I'm aware of now. How do I do it, right? And so that's where my mind immediately goes. And I agree, dude. If I look at every growth opportunity in my life, every challenge that I've been fortunate enough to be given and an opportunity to overcome, and specifically as it relates to daughters and being a girl dad, dude, it is a minefield of challenges, and they're incredible. They're all gifts if you're willing to find the space.
Yep.
If you're willing to find the space and you're bold enough to take extreme ownership that you dictate what happens in that space. You don't control the stimulus, but you control that piece, and then what you do in that piece dictates the results afterwards. And so that's where the first hero ideology plugs in.
Yep. I love it, dude. And to harp on that, that's the space, the activating event, the trigger you can't control, but there's a lot of different steps and spaces in between that filter down to how you respond to that triggering activating event. There's so many spaces, and that's where we live. That's where the first hero lives, inside of those spaces, making those tiny choices, right? The small hinges swing big doors. Those small changes of living and making those choices inside of those spaces is exactly where we live as a first hero. That's the exact definition, Rich. That's fucking beautiful. You nailed it. Nailed it. Well, cool, man. So if this episode hit you, if any of this stuff rang true, if you're like, dude, holy shit, my mind is blown, this podcast is for you. You're a cycle breaker. You're on your way to designing Some of you are drifting. I know most of us are drifting in some area, facet of life, but this is for you. You're on your way to being a designer of your life and a designer of the relationship with your daughter. So we have one request from you. We have a girl dad quiz. It's a girl dad type quiz. Go take it. It takes 5 minutes. Really what we're going to do, what it does is it finds your compatibility with your daughter. It has your parent, your girl dad type, your blind spots, your weaknesses, and it gives you some really cool free stuff to help you with that, to create an irreversible and unbreakable bond with your daughter. So it takes 5 minutes. It's somewhere in one of these links below on our
show notes,
somewhere.
description.
It's somewhere around here. So so remember, distraction is the enemy, breaking the cycle is your duty, and legacy is the only thing you leave behind. And remember, you are just one decision away from becoming the hero your daughter deserves.